All right. Hi there, A Pushers. This is Mr. Vieira,
And Mr. Eskridge.
and we are going to take you guys through Chapter 1, The New World. This is part of your summer assignment, and just a quick reminder before we get started and before we get into the content, the reading quiz for Chapter 1 is on your first day of school, and you are allowed, of course, to use your reading notes on that test on that first day. So we're going to go ahead and get into it, beginning with the peopling of America. So before Christopher Columbus, any European sets foot on the continent of North America, Central America, South America, there's obviously human beings there. Now, most historians agree that people crossed from Asia into North America using the Bering Strait. Now, this is possible because during the Ice Age, there was far less seawater, and so there was a land bridge which allowed people to traverse the Bering Strait and enter North America. Now, through thousands of years, these people spread through North America into Central America and then, of course, into South America. And it wasn't just one homogenous group like Disney makes it out to be. People that settled in the Americas developed distinct languages, there were social structures, there were powerful tribes, there were less powerful tribes, and they developed culture and societies of their own that we're going to get into here shortly.
I think one of the ways that we can see this very diverse culture that existed and people's prior to European contact is through those 2,000 various languages that were spoken amongst the Native American people. And here's just a quick map of what the Bering Strait land bridge would have looked like during the Ice Age on the left, and then once the ice melted and the sea covered the bridge. Okay, so on the eve of European contact or conquest, as we mentioned earlier, the Native American people had these very diverse political, economic, and social systems that Europeans, once they landed, although they saw them as being inferior to European political, economic, and cultural practices, they were in fact really diverse and very developed on their own. And so we really see the development, the domestication of corn or maize around 5000 BC in Mexico, starting in central Mexico around where Mexico City is today. And then we see the spread of corn northward and southward throughout the Americas. And what corn allowed people to do is to become more settled in their villages and allow them to domesticate themselves more. And so we see nomadic people settling down and starting, when people settle down, then they start to develop deeper and richer political, economic, and social connections with one another. There's a number of powerful tribes or kind of powerful regions throughout North America, particularly in what will become the United States, that historians look to as kind of examples that they differ based on region. So in the Southwest, we have the Pueblo people in the Rio Grande River that are developing their own culture, their own political, economic systems. Up in the Northeast, we have the Iroquois, who again are more developed, settled, and that's really where at least the English are going to come in contact with first. In the Mississippi River Valley, we have the Cahokia, which is a good example of kind of the diversity and the structure of the Native American peoples in these dense populations.
Okay, so here, a lot of what you're going to experience in AP U.S. history, and one of the things that myself and Mr. Eskridge will both preach is using specific examples when you're writing, in conversation and discussions that we have in class. And so throughout these lectures that we give, we're going to show you guys the way in which we use specific historical examples. So we mentioned the Cahokia tribe of the Mississippi River Valley, and this is an artist's rendering of what that settlement looked like. And as you can see, when the Europeans land in the New World, civilization was present here. Obviously, there's more famous cases of the Aztecs and Incas, but in the modern day United States, there's cases of these massive, powerful tribes that had a social structure, government systems of their own, and the Cahokia are a good example of that. They were tens of thousands of people living in this city when Columbus sets foot in the New World in the 1490s.
And here's just another example of those diverse and really established populations. So here in the southwest, we have the Pueblo, the cliff dwellings, these highly defensible structures and communities that were literally carved into the faces of these rocks. So yeah, just shows the diversity.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit deeper about the people themselves, their lifestyle, their day-to-day, day in, day out, what we saw in the Americas on the eve of conquest. So one of the things that was common throughout the southeast United States was an agricultural practice known as three sister farming. Now, three sister farming involved planting corn, bean, and squash together. And this would lead to the Native American tribes in the southeast and on the east coast of what is the modern day United States having high caloric intake. Now, in chapter 2, we'll talk about Jamestown and we'll talk about some other English settlements. But one of the realities is that the tribes that the English settled in when colonization began were much taller than them, healthier than them, had longer life expectancy than their English counterparts. And a lot of that is due to the diet. The diet of tribes such as the Cherokee Creek Choctaw, the Powhatan Nation, which we'll talk about in chapter 2. These were healthy people who used the land and had a unique concept of land ownership that Mr. Eskridge will discuss.
Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot in the push of really comparing and contrasting different communities. And at the beginning of the course, we're looking at what do the Europeans bring to the table, and then what do the Native Americans bring, and later we'll introduce what do Africans bring to what will become this kind of mosaic of what will become the United States. And so one of the first things that we need to talk about is land ownership. And just kind of the difference in concept of land ownership between Europeans and people in the Americas. So in the European concept, land was more privately owned. And we'll see this much later when we see, if you remember from world history, the enclosure movement and kind of that shift towards industrialization, which we're starting to see the seeds of during this time. So in Europe, land was more privately owned, and therefore, if Mr. Vieira owned some land, I did not necessarily have the right to go on his land and do whatever I wanted there. And so that's very much how the Europeans saw land use, as it was, held within an individual or a family, and therefore outsiders could not come and interact with that land without, maybe having to fight for it or pay for it or in something like that, some ways. Whereas in the United States, or what would become the U.S. In North America, we have kind of different ideas of land ownership, where land was more communal and land existed for the benefit of the people. And we're going to see this play out in numerous different ways later. But so when Europeans come, they lay stake. They claim this land in the name of England, this land in the name of Spain, and in the name of Portugal. And for Native Americans, they don't understand that concept because land is not held that way. So they're really baffled by how can these people come and say that this is their territory? How can they claim ownership over this? And so we're going to see conflict over that, those different things. So moving on.
So we just put this here as an example for you guys to see the three sister farming method, what it actually looks like. You can see the diagram on the left-hand side, and then just your regular stock photo that we pulled from the internet of what three sister farming looks like. So the corn, the beans, and the squash all planted together, maximizing the use of the land.
Okay, so another thing that we're going to really hit on and hammer in throughout this course is when we look at immigration, when we look at